Hello everyone and welcome back to RPG PhD. I'm Dr. Ben. Today we're talking about one of my favorite secret weapons as a game master and world builder, curiosity loops. The design pattern that keeps players leaning in, theorizing between sessions, and begging for just 5 more minutes. We'll break down the psychology, why curiosity hurts just enough to motivate action, then translate that into concrete game master tools you can use this week. We'll cover how to pose better questions, how to pace partial answers, how to escalate mystery without stonewalling, and how to make every clue feel like progress instead of trivia. So let's make your table ravenous for answers without you dumping exposition or solving the puzzle for them. So first, what is a curiosity loop? A curiosity loop is the narrative and psychological cycle that keeps players leaning forward at the table. At its simplest, it's a feedback system of question, action, partial answer, bigger question. It's not just about mystery, it's about the momentum of wanting to know. When you ask players a question through your world, an odd symbol, a missing body, an NPC who refuses to finish their sentence, you're not giving them a puzzle, you're creating a gap in knowledge that the brain aches to close. This is what behavioral scientist George Loewenstein called the information gap theory of curiosity. Curiosity arises when we sense a gap between what we know and what we want to know. That gap feels uncomfortable, even painful. We act, roll dice, ask questions, chase rumors, not just for treasure, but to relieve that tension. Good game masters know how to widen that gap just enough to keep players moving through it. Psychologist Daniel Berlyne demonstrated that curiosity follows an arousal curve. Too little uncertainty and we're bored. Too much and we're overwhelmed. The sweet spot lies in the middle, the space where the mystery feels solvable but not simple. That's the game master's playground. Your goal isn't to confuse your players, but to keep them in that energized zone of partial understanding. When they think, I almost have it, then you've got them hooked. We can see curiosity loops in every medium that builds suspense. Television mysteries end episodes with new revelations that reframe what we thought we knew. Video games often structured their entire player experience around iterative discovery. Each answer illuminates part of the world, but hints at something vaster. Tabletop role-playing games are uniquely suited to this because they're participatory. The players generate hypotheses in real time. Every theory they form closes one loop and opens another, creating a living cycle of engagement. At the table, curiosity loops operate on 3 levels at once. Cognitively, they trigger our predictive machinery. The mind wants closure. Emotionally, they evoke the thrill of the unknown, what David Huron calls sweet anticipation, the pleasure of waiting for resolution. Socially, they bond the group. Shared uncertainty drives discussion, speculation, and collaboration. When the group leans over the table to argue about what the runes mean, that's not distraction, it's immersion. The key to maintaining this loop is, of course, balance. You can't starve players of answers indefinitely, nor can you hand them all the truths at once. Each revelation should feel like progress, a new piece of clarity that deepens the mystery rather than ending it. When the players finally learn that the assassin wasn't hired by the Duke, but by the Duke's shadow double from a forgotten timeline, you've resolved one curiosity loop and opened another, a larger one. The system sustains itself through rhythm, revelation followed by re-enhancement. Ultimately, curiosity loops transform information into drama. They take what could be simple exposition and make it kinetic, something players do, not just something they hear. Every unanswered question becomes a gravitational force, pulling them deeper into your world. As a game master, you're not withholding information, you're orchestrating its release. That's the heart of the loop: tension, relief, expansion. The art of making people desperate to know and satisfied to keep wondering. So let's look at 3 tiers of questions. Every great campaign thrives on questions, but not all questions are created equal. Some are fleeting curiosities that keep a scene alive. Others linger in the players' minds for months, reshaping how they understand the world. To manage this complexity without overwhelming your table, it helps to think of curiosity as a layered system, what I call the 3 tiers of questions. Each tier functions like a different orbit around the story's sun. The closer the question, the faster it turns over. The farther away, the slower and more mythic its movement. The trick for a game master is to keep all 3 spinning simultaneously. At the innermost level are local questions, the immediate, tactile mysteries that drive moment-to-moment play. These are the questions players can see and touch. Who left this dagger behind? Why is the tavern empty? What's making that sound in the cellar? They're specific, actionable, and solvable within minutes or hours of game time. Local questions create momentum. They give players something to do right now and let them feel progress. In game design terms, they are micro rewards. Each answer closes a small curiosity loop and triggers that satisfying release of competence. But they also create rhythm, the steady pulse of curiosity that keeps scenes alive. Even when your players are taking a long rest or haggling in the market, a well-placed local questions turns downtime into engagement. Moving outward, we find arc questions, the mid-term mysteries that stretch across multiple sessions or story chapters. These are the connective tissue of narrative design, the threads that transform a string of encounters into a story. An arc question might be, why is the Baron buying grave soil? Or who keeps sabotaging our ship's navigation array? They rarely have simple answers. Instead, each revelation reframes the problem. Arc questions provide coherence. They give context to individual adventures and justify player choices over time. Some game designers have emphasized the importance of emotional rhythm, alternating between moments of hope and fear, clarity and confusion. Arc questions are the perfect instrument for that rhythm. Every partial discovery becomes a beat shift. The party feels a win, but the stakes subtly rise. Finally, at the outermost orbit are mythic or core questions, the grand uncertainties that define the campaign's cosmology. They often start as philosophical rather than factual. What really happened to the gods? Why did magic disappear? Who decides what fate means? These questions might not resolve until the campaign's final act, or might never be fully answered at all. Their function isn't just narrative closure, it's emotional gravity. They make the world feel vast, layered, and alive beyond the table's edge. Players might close the campaign without ever discovering the full truth, but the pursuit of that truth is what gives meaning to their actions. These are the questions that make your game linger in the memory long after the dice stop rolling. The rule of 1-1-1 is a simple way to maintain balance. At any given time, ensure the group has at least one local, one arc, and one mythic question in play. That combination creates a satisfying blend of pace, purpose, and depth. If you have too many local mysteries, sessions feel episodic and maybe even disconnected. Too many arc-level questions without local grounding, and players lose direction. And if the mythic tier is missing, your world risks feeling small, interesting but shallow, like a mystery that only exists room by room. The interplay between tiers is what creates dramatic texture. Each small discovery gestures toward a greater unknown. In practice, this layering looks like a chain of escalating curiosities. For example, in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, a local question might be, who is murdering beggars in the Docklands? Which expands into the arc question, Why are their corpses marked with a comet symbol? That in turn hints at maybe a mythic question. Is this the prophesied return of Sigmar, or something pretending to be him? Every answer propels the players into a deeper orbit of consequence. Similarly, in Call of Cthulhu, a local question, what's scratching under the floorboards, quickly becomes, why does the town forbid digging wells? Which finally blossoms into, what lies beneath the city that the human mind cannot survive knowing? Each tier also mirrors a different player experience. Local questions might engage tactical minds. They're about deduction, resource use, and situational awareness. Art questions might engage more strategic minds. They appeal to players who enjoy piecing together patterns and long-term planning. And mythic questions might engage philosophical minds, those drawn to big ideas, emotional resonance, and existential stakes. So by balancing these layers and interconnecting them, you ensure that every type of player has a reason to care, a mystery to chase, and a reward waiting for them in their preferred domain of play. A well-structured campaign doesn't just answer questions, it cultivates them across these three levels, keeping curiosity alive in multiple timescales. The local tier satisfies, the arc tier sustains, and the mythic tier transcends. Together they form a narrative ecology. Every answer is nourishment, but the hunger never fully goes away. As a game master, your job isn't to feed them all at once, it's to cook the next question before they realize they're full. So now I want to talk about 7 reliable ways to seed curiosity. Curiosity doesn't arise by accident. It's something we engineer. As a game master, your task isn't merely to hide information, it's to design questions that invite pursuit. The key is to create information gaps that are visible but not trivial, mysterious but not impenetrable. According to cognitive psychologist Daniel Berlyne, curiosity is most powerful when it balances novelty with comprehensibility, when something feels just barely within reach. So when you see curiosity at the table, you're manipulating the bandwidth of attention, keeping players in that sweet zone of tension, where every clue feels like a lead and every silence feels meaningful. So let's break down 7 techniques that consistently trigger that instinct to lean forward. Incomplete patterns. This is sort of environmental storytelling. Humans are hardwired for pattern recognition. When we see a sequence that's missing a piece, our minds rush to fill it in. The psychological mechanism is the Gestalt principle of closure. We complete what's incomplete. In game terms, that means leaving traces that suggest meaning without stating it outright. A farmhouse with 5 plates, but only 4 chairs. A suit of armor missing its right glove. A map where a city has been meticulously erased. The absence is what draws attention. In Dungeons & Dragons, a half-burned tapestry depicting a forgotten battle hints that someone wanted the past obscured. In Alien, the role-playing game, a log file that skips every 7th entry implies tampering, or something worse. You're not telling a story, you're letting players complete it, and that act of completion is what binds them to the world. Contradictory testimony, or what we call NPC triangulation. If you want instant intrigue, make 3 characters tell 3 partially true stories that can't all be reconciled. This technique plays on what communication theorists call incongruence, the cognitive discomfort we feel when information conflicts. Players will instinctively try to resolve the contradiction. In Blades in the Dark, a crew might interrogate 3 factions about a smuggling job. The dockers blame the spirit wardens. The wardens insist they were framed by the inspectors. And the inspectors claim the dockers never existed. The truth is nested somewhere between. The contradiction is the hook. The mystery isn't about what happened, but which truth serves whose purpose. This approach works especially well in social or investigative campaigns because it lets curiosity emerge from relationships rather than from just props. Redactive artifacts. These are black bars and missing pages, if you want to think about it that way. Few things spark the imagination like visible censorship. When players find a journal entry with blacked out lines or a research log with entire paragraphs deleted, they fill in the blanks with dread. The technique leverages what literary scholar Roland Barthes might call the readerly gap, the space where interpretation becomes play. In Call of Cthulhu, a burned letter that reads, "Shall awaken when the tide," is more effective than any lore dump. In science fiction, a damaged AI recording might cut out mid-sentence. The test subject achieved. These omissions tell players that knowledge has consequences. Someone tried to hide this, and that alone implies significance. When you redact, you're not withholding information, you're dramatizing the act of secrecy itself. Anomalous physiology or physics, the uncanny detail. A single contradiction in the logic of the world can generate endless fascination. A shadow that falls the wrong direction, a mirror that doesn't reflect one character, a corpse with eyes that have turned to glass. The uncanny operates on what Freud called the unheimlich, the familiar made strange. It's not pure mystery, it's discomfort. In Mothership or Eclipse Phase, that might be a crew member whose biometrics no longer match the ship's database. In fantasy, it could be a cleric whose healing spells cause brief flashes of a skeletal X-ray under their skin. These phenomena imply hidden rules, a deeper physics waiting to be explained. Every anomaly says there's an order here, but you don't understand it yet. That line is the heartbeat of curiosity. Repetition and motif, the pattern that follows them. Repetition feels meaningful, even when it isn't. When players notice a recurring symbol, phrase, or melody, they assign narrative weight. This taps into what David Huron calls anticipatory patterning, our compulsion to predict recurrence. In a folklore-infused campaign, a spiral carved into trees, pottery, and a noble's ring slowly accumulates mythic significance. In Cyberpunk, a string of identical digital signatures across different networks implies a vast hidden hand. The repetition itself is the revelation. It transforms randomness into story. To heighten the effect, escalate the motif's context. The first time, it's graffiti. The second time, a prayer. The third, carved into flesh. Each encounter reinforces curiosity and dread in equal measure. Choice-locked information. This is curiosity through consequence. Not all questions are solved by finding clues. Some are unlocked by choosing when and how to pursue them. You can make curiosity kinetic by tying information to cost or commitment. Maybe the only witness will talk if the party spares her lover. Maybe the archive can only be opened at midnight, but entering locks them in until dawn. When information becomes a resource that must be spent or risked, curiosity gains teeth. This approach relies on what narrative theorists call investment loops. Curiosity converts into decision, and decision converts into narrative ownership. In Blades in the Dark, a crew might need to burn a valuable favor to learn who betrayed them. In Delta Green, pursuing an extra lead means staying on scene 1 hour too long enough for something to find them. The question isn't just what's the truth, but what are you willing to pay to know it? Now let's talk about omen clocks. It's a visible but vague countdown. Sometimes the best way to spark curiosity is to let players see the timer, but not the event it counts down to. This is the Chekhov's clock of tabletop design. Label a clock simply "the door opens" or "the stars align" and tick it forward after certain player actions. Each tick makes them speculate. What door? What star? You've created what game designer Greg Costigan would call structured uncertainty, a game element that signals inevitable change without revealing its form. It's fair, visible tension, and it works across genres. In Dungeon World, the doom track might advance whenever someone says a forbidden word. In Cyberpunk, the clock could represent a corporation's progress tracking the party's signal. The countdown isn't punishment, it's prophecy. Every tick says you're making the story happen. So let's put all this together. Each of these techniques works because it engages a different aspect of human cognition: pattern completion, contradiction resolution, risk assessment, or temporal prediction. You don't need to use all of them every session, but the more varied your methods, the richer your campaign's curiosity texture becomes. In a typical session, you might begin with an incomplete pattern, the abandoned village. Introduce contradictory testimony from its survivors, and punctuate the act with an omen clock that ticks whenever someone mentions the village's name. Each layer adds a new rhythm to the loop: short, mid, and long-term mysteries, feeding each other. When done right, your world stops feeling like a puzzle to solve and starts feeling like a living riddle that wants to be understood. Now let's talk about how to answer without ending the loop. A mystery that never resolves frustrates. A mystery that resolves too completely dies. The art of satisfying curiosity without ending it is one of the great balancing acts of storytelling. This is true whether you're writing a novel, designing a video game, or running a tabletop campaign. Players need answers to feel momentum, but if every secret is laid bare, the emotional engine sputters out. The secret is not to withhold information, but to orchestrate revelation, to give answers that resolve one layer of curiosity while exposing a deeper, more complex one beneath. You're not closing a door, you're opening a new hallway. At the cognitive level, this technique works because of the reward prediction mechanism, a concept borrowed from neuroscience. When players think they're about to get a payoff, their brains flood with dopamine. But the release is strongest not when they receive total clarity, but when they receive a partial one that implies more to come. It's the same reason serialized fiction hooks audiences. You can think about things like Lost, The Expanse, or even Twin Peaks. Each episode answers something, but in a way that raises new, larger questions. In game terms, this rhythm turns information into active resources. Players aren't passive recipients, they're detectives trying to model a living world. A practical framework for this process, you can call it the 3-2-1 answer method. Every time your players uncover a piece of truth, give them 3 facts that concretely advance the story, 2 implications that complicate their understanding, and 1 bigger question that reframes everything they thought they knew. This ensures that progress always feels earned but never final. For example, in a Warhammer Fantasy roleplay campaign, the players might learn that the missing miners weren't kidnapped, they were taken as offerings. That's your first fact. The second is the offering ritual involves salt rather than blood. And third, the foreman's wife still wears a pendant shaped like a crustacean claw. The implications? The cult isn't demonic, it's maritime, and the foreman might be complicit. The bigger question, what god of the sea demands salt instead of sacrifice? The players feel satisfied, answers were given, but the mystery has simply evolved to a higher tier. To apply this technique consistently, think of each revelation as a pivot point rather than a conclusion. The goal is for every answered question to either expose a contradiction, the cult protects people from the tide, but their victims drown, widen the scope, the miners' cult is only one of many coastal sects, or introduce moral or emotional cost. To stop the ritual, you must flood the harbor. This transformation from factual to philosophical questioning is one thing that can deepen player investment. The curiosity loop matures. It's no longer what happened, but what does it mean? That shift, when the players start debating ethics instead of clues, is when your world becomes real. Another powerful trick is the reframing answer. Instead of revealing that the player's assumptions were wrong, show that they were right for the wrong reasons. In Call of Cthulhu, the investigators might believe the villagers worship an ancient sea god. When they finally confront the cult, they discover, yes, they do, but the god is actually an alien terraformer that preserves life in its own bizarre way. Their hypothesis was correct, but the frame of reality has shifted. The world just grew larger. This technique preserves the satisfaction of being right while still renewing the sense of wonder. A game master's greatest ally in all this is tone. When revealing a clue, avoid the flat recitation of facts. Treat every discovery as a dramatic beat. Let silence hang before the reveal, then phrase it in a way that opens emotional space. Instead of "you find a journal entry detailing the ritual," you find a single phrase written again and again in different hands. We remember what the sea forgets. That one line both gives and withholds. It resolves the question of what the cult believes, but provokes a deeper question. Why do they need to remind the sea? The language itself becomes part of the mystery. Finally, remember that not all curiosity loops need closure at all. Some are meant to fade into myth. Think of your favorite stories that thrive on ambiguity. At your table, leaving one question unanswered, intentionally and openly, can be more powerful than tying every loose thread. The goal isn't certainty, it's continuing fascination. When the campaign ends and your players still wonder whether the stars they saw were alive, you've done your job. In short, the goal of answering without ending is to create narrative resonance. Players should walk away from each revelation feeling both smarter and smaller, closer to the truth, yet aware of how much vaster the world is than their understanding. Every answer should echo, not conclude. In that echo lies the music of curiosity. Now let's talk about pacing the loop. This is a way of avoiding frustration. If curiosity is the heartbeat of your campaign, pacing is its pulse. The best mysteries, adventures, and investigations don't simply exist, they breathe. They tighten and release, giving players the satisfaction of progress and the tension of the unknown in deliberate rhythm. Get that pacing wrong, and curiosity, the very thing that powers engagement, turns into fatigue. Players go from "we need to know" to "who cares anymore?" And once that happens, no amount of clever world building will bring them fully back. The human mind often doesn't tolerate unresolved curiosity indefinitely. Psychologists like George Loewenstein showed that curiosity creates a cognitive tension that demands closure. Too much tension, and players experience frustration. Too little, and the game feels flat. The game master's role is to manage that tension curve, to keep it oscillating between mystery and revelation. You want your players always hovering in that productive space between confidence and doubt, where they feel capable of discovery but never fully safe in what they know. At any given time, 3 tempos are at work at your table. You can think of them as micro, meso, and macro rhythms of discovery. These are the pacing gears of your campaign. Micro is pacing refers to moment. This is curiosity inside a single scene or encounter. It's the rhythm of beats, every question, roll, or clue that propels immediate attention. In a tense stealth scene, a micro beat might be, "Does the guard notice you?" followed by a description that introduces a new micro question. "Why was the vault already open?" Micro pacing thrives on immediacy, short feedback loops that give frequent, tangible payoffs. Meso pacing governs session-level arcs, the rise and fall of curiosity across a few hours of play. This is where you manage satisfaction, ensuring at least one substantial question is answered by session's end, while another, larger question replaces it. It's almost like the television episode model, closure that invites continuation. Macro pacing is the campaign's long game, the slow burn mysteries and world scale secrets that evolve over months. These questions are rarely about what, but about why. They require patience and periodic reinforcement so they don't fade from the player's working memory. Symbolic callbacks, thematic echoes, or recurring imagery can keep macro mysteries alive without constant exposition. Understanding these layers allows you to modulate curiosity intentionally, like a composer balancing melody and harmony. One thing to consider is cognitive load theory, which tells us that players can only juggle a limited number of open loops before the experience shifts from stimulating to stressful. The trick is to limit simultaneous mysteries while expanding their depth. Instead of 5 shallow questions, focus on 3 deep ones at different scales. When in doubt, close one loop before opening another. You're not removing mystery, you're clearing bandwidth for new wonder. For example, if the group is still trying to identify who stole the necromancer's grimoire, don't immediately drop a new thread talking about the raven's prophecy. Let them resolve or shelve one before you complicate their cognitive field. Otherwise, you risk collapsing curiosity into noise, a web of open questions too tangled to care about. Sometimes players simply stall. They can't see the next step, and the tension that once drove excitement becomes paralyzing. This is where curiosity pressure valves come in. Mechanisms that release tension without deflating mystery. So you can think about rumor tables. Always let players buy a lead through tavern talk, dreams, or divination. Even a false lead relieves stasis. Escalation clocks. If players hesitate, the world advances. A visible countdown reminds them the story moves with or without them. Mobile clues. Let the next piece of information come to them. The messenger arrives, or the artifact reacts to their presence. It feels organic, not like a Game Master rescue. Each valve reintroduces movement. Remember, curiosity thrives on action, not paralysis. So keep the curiosity curve alive. Rise, spike, drop, renew. Balance micro, meso, and macro rhythms. Use fail forward to maintain movement. Employ pressure valves to avoid stalls. And vary pacing to meet different player appetites for mystery. Treat revelation as performance, not simply data. When pacing works, curiosity doesn't feel like confusion, it feels like momentum. The table leans forward together. Every silence hums with expectation. And when the answer finally comes, it lands not as relief, but as propulsion. The next heartbeat in an unbroken rhythm of wonder. So now let's talk about some concrete drop-in frameworks that can work with a multitude of systems. The breadcrumb triangle. Create 3 independent clue paths to the same revelation. Place, person, paper. When they collect 2, trigger a reframe scene, a cut to the villain reacting, or an omen advancing. The rumor ecology. Write 8 short rumors. 4 are true, 2 are bent, 2 are bait. Tag each rumor with a stake. Gold, safety, reputation. So curiosity aligns with motivation. The sanity of secrets. Clues always come with a small cost. Stress, a phobia tick, a strange dream fragment. Curiosity hurts a little, reinforcing tone. The diegetic wiki. NPC librarians, archivists, or a hexcrawl codex where entries unlock as the party asks the right categories of questions. Not single answers, but tagged access. The wiki, in this case, grows. Curiosity is rewarded with scope, not necessarily spoilers. You can also think about language that fuels curiosity. These are Game Master lines you can steal. Things like, you're partly right, and that's the worrying bit. You find what you expected, and one thing you very much didn't. 3 details line up perfectly. The 4th won't. You can have the safe code or the time of the next delivery. Which is more urgent? You've seen that symbol before, but never in that color. Answering this now will cost you daylight. Do you still want it? These phrases do 3 things at once. Confirm progress, introduce fiction, and pose a choice. Choice plus uncertainty equals curiosity loop refueled. So that wraps up our video on curiosity loop. That's the engine. Seed a question, pay it off just enough, and use every answer to open a bigger door. Do that rhythmically and your players will text each other theories all week. If you found this video useful, please hit those like, subscribe, and share it with your fellow game masters and players. And let me know in the comments below, what's the best mystery your group ever solved? I look forward to hearing about it. Or what are your techniques for opening and closing those curiosity loops? I'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.